Welcome back, friends, to our average rate of change notes. Let's pick up right where we left off. So it says the table represents the high temperatures for different days in the month of August in a local city. What was the rate of change in high temperatures between August 1st and August 5th? So what we want to do is we want to look at the table and make sure we understand. So on the table, it says that here is August 1st, and the temperature was 85 degrees. And then here on August 5th, the temperature was 97 degrees. So what we have is our X's are the days, because these are what are given to us. So this is like our X1 and our X2. So X1, X2. That means the temperatures, these are the outputs, so our Y's. So Y1 and Y2. Using that, we can go ahead and they're like an ordered pair. Okay? And we can set up our slope formula, which says Y2, which is 97, minus Y1, which is 85, divided by X2, which is 5, minus X1, which is 1. Okay? When we do the math here, this gives us a 12 over 4, which is 3. So what does this mean? Okay, it says what's the rate of change in high temperatures? So essentially this is the fraction 3 over 1. So it means a 3-degree temperature per every 1 day. Okay, so the temperature changes 3 degrees in 1 day. So that's what we got when we figured that 3 out right there. Okay. Now, the next part of this says during which time interval, so which days, remember, this is the days that we're talking about, was the rate of change in high temperatures the lowest? So we already know that it was 3 degrees, okay, for day 1 to day 5. But then, if we look at day 10 and day 15 over here, what do we notice about the temperature? We notice about the temperature difference here is 0. Okay? So the change in here is a 0-degree difference. Okay? So we want to know where the rate of change in the temperature was the lowest. Well, if the temperature is not changing, then that should be our lowest because it stayed the same. The temperatures are the same. So let's write the interval for that. Well, the interval, remember, is the days. So we can either say that it's the interval from 10 less than or equal to X less than or equal to 15, or we can write it as the 10th day and the 15th day. Okay? Whichever way you want to write it is just fine. All right, let's look at the next problem. It says, in 2005, Mike made 49 meatballs for the school banquet. In 2007, Mike made 56 meatballs for the school banquet. Determine the rate of change in meatballs between 2005 and 2007. Okay, well, if these are our X's, this is the first X and this is the second X, let's figure the Y's that go with them. Okay, so in 2005, Mike made 49 meatballs. But in 2007, he made 56 meatballs. So now we can just set up our Y2, 56, sorry, that's messy, 56 minus 49. So remember, this is Y2 minus Y1. Now we're going to divide by X2 minus X1. Okay, well, X2 is 2007 minus X1, which is 2005. Okay, so that is going to give us 7 over 2. Well, what does that mean? That means that there was a blank of blank meatballs per year. Well, this one right here means 7 meatballs because the y represented the number of meatballs, and this is in 2 years. So how could we figure out per 1 year? Okay, well, we can take that and we can divide. Well, what is 7 divided by 2? It's 3.5. So that means there was an increase because it's a positive number of 3.5 meatballs per 1 year. Okay, let me move this down to the next page so it's not in the way. All right, so now on the next section, we're just doing more practice. So I'm going to do the 2 of them, then you're going to practice them, and then we'll come back and check our answers. So here we're going to be using y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So this is the first x, this is the second x, because remember, every ordered pair is an x comma y. This is y1, this is y2. So we're going to do -1 minus, be careful with your signs, -2, divided by -3 minus 2. Guys, if you're struggling with negatives, then you need to use a calculator to double check your work. When you subtract a negative, that turns positive. So we have a -1 plus 2, which is 1, and a -3 minus 2, which is 5. So we get 1/5. Okay. On the next one, we are gonna, let's label our x1, y1, x2, y2, and let's fill it in. So our slope, okay, I could have been writing an m next to all of these just so we know that this is our slope, but we don't have to. So y2 is 7 minus y1, which is a -5, divided by x2, -1, minus x1, which is 2. Again, remember, when you subtract a negative, it turns positive. So this is going to give us a 12. And -1 minus 2 is a -3. Divide this and we get a -4. All right, so go ahead, pause the video, do B and C. All right, you should be back. For B, you should get -1/2, and for D, you should get 2/3. All right, now let's look at the other type of example. This is from a graph, and we're giving you certain intervals. So I'll do the first 2, and then you're going to try the next 2 on your own. So on the first one, remember, if we have a graph, we can just count rise over run. So we just have to find this x and this x on the graph. So when x is -3, that's over here, we go up and we find the point on the graph. Then we find where x is 1, that's here, and find the point on the graph. Remember, we count from left to right, so we go from the left point, and this time I have to move down. We should know that by looking at it, it's a negative slope, and then to the right. So we're going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So -8, 1, 2, 3, and over 4. So this is a -8, down 8, and to the right 4, which gives us a -2 slope. Okay. If you want to use ordered pairs on this, you can use ordered pairs and plug it into the slope formula, but I think if you have a graph, it's easier to just count. Okay. On the next one, we have, this is just another way to write an interval. This is the first x, and this is the second x. This is not an ordered pair. So that means we're going to find when x is 1, here's our point we already found. When x is 3, here's the point we need. So we're going to count rise over run. This is a rise of 4, so our slope is a rise of 4 and a run of 2, which gives us a slope of 2. It should make sense. It's positive, it's increasing, and so is this piece of the line. It's going up. All right, go ahead and pause it and do C and D. All right, you should have C and D done. You should have 0 and -1. 0 divided by any number is 0 on C. All right, example number 3. These ones are very similar to the ones that we just did. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video, find these ones, and then come back. Okay, you should have been able to get -1, 1, -2, and 1/2. All right, let's look at the last examples here. these are tables, okay? They're given to us and they represent ordered pairs. So like this first one, this is the ordered pair -2, 3. It's just written in the table. So the left-hand column is all the x's and the right-hand column is the y that goes with those x's, okay? There's one really easy way that we can do this. And if you remember in the earlier video, I said that slope can be calculated as the change in your y value divided by the change in your x value, as long as it's constant. Okay, so here we're trying to find the slope of the whole table, so these are all constant. So let's determine what is the change going on between each of these x values. From -2 to -1, that's an increase of 1. This is an increase of 1, this is an increase of 1, and an increase of 1. So notice they're all the same. On the other side, the y's, how are these ones changing? Well, these are from 3 to 5 is an increase of 2. From 5 to 7, an increase of 2. And 7 to 9 is an increase of 2. And from 9 to 11 is another increase of 2. So we want to put the change in y, which is this, over the change in x, which is this side. So we're going to say that our slope is the change in y, which is 2, over the change in x, which is 1, which just gives us a slope of 2. Okay. So we can do the same thing on the next one. Okay, so if you remember, I said this side over here is the change in y, because it's our y list. This side over here was our change in x. Okay, so first we want the left, it doesn't matter which one we find, these are all +1. Okay, and then the side of the y values from 12 to 9 is decreasing by 3. Okay, each one of these are going down by 3. So we want to put the change in y divided by the change in x. So our change in y is down 3 and our change in y is -3 and our change in x is 1. So this is going to give us a slope of -3. Okay, why don't you take a second using that same process, figure out C and D, and then come back and check. Okay, on this one you should have gotten that the change in y over change in x is 12 over 2, which gives you 6 for C. And for D, you get the change in y, which is 3, over the change in x, which is 1, and you get a 3. All right, make sure you do the problems that go with this, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.